Okay, so here we go. This is my Septuagint. And this is the book of Esther. And you will see in chapter 1, it doesn't have any verses listed for quite a ways down. We get over into the second column, second paragraph, before it says verse 1. And when you get to verse 1 and you compare it to your Bible, it's going to be the same as verse 1. But all this ahead of verse 1 is not recorded in our modern Bibles. What is not recorded is often things that are very supernatural. I don't know if they wanted to cut out the supernatural, if they just didn't think it was relevant. I'm not really sure why they chose what they chose, but they chose to leave parts out. It's pretty interesting to understand that also in the Septuagint, you will notice that a lot of names are pronounced or written differently. It's kind of like the Old English ways of saying them. So some of them are a little harder to understand. But bear with me because you'll know who the people are if you've read the book of Esther before. And I think the chapter 1, I do believe, starts in the 3rd year of the reign of the king, whereas this starts out with in the 2nd year of the reign of Artaxerxes. Now some say Xerxes, some say Ahasuerus, or however you pronounce that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Ahasuerus, I can't pronounce it. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about if you've read it before. Anyway, same guy, different names. They were called different names in different parts of the world. So that's why there's different names. But anyways, this is the book of Esther, chapter 1. In the 2nd year of the reign of Artaxerxes, the great king, on the 1st day of Nisan. Now this is Mordecai. It's Mordecaius in here, but we are accustomed to calling him Mordecai because that's how it's translated into the English Bible that we normally read. So I'm just going to say, instead of saying Mordecaius, I think I'm just going to try to just say Mordecai so that you'll be more familiar with who we're talking about. Okay, he's the son of Jarius, the son of Simonias, the son of Kisos, I don't know how to say that, of the tribe of Benjamin. Now those names are the son of, the grandson of, the great-grandson of. Those are also different, more pronounceable English names in your Bible, and you can compare those and you will see that they are similar. Okay, so he's from the tribe of Benjamin. He was a Jew dwelling in the city of Susa. He was a great man, serving in the king's palace, and he saw a vision. Now, he was of the captivity which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried captive from Jerusalem with Jeconiah, the king of Judah. And if you're familiar with the book of Daniel, you are familiar with when there were actually, I think, 3 different times when they went and took people captive. If you're familiar with that story, you know that they only took captive, the captives that they took and brought to the king's, directly into where the king lived, into Susa, were the ones of the royal bloodlines. They were the most intelligent, the most learned, the most skillful. They were the top of the top, the best of the best. Children of the kings, children of the princes, is who was taken into the area where the king actually was. The king only wanted the best of the best serving him because he was, he had a high head. He was very prideful. So Mordecai must have been, since he was serving in the king's palace, he must have been one of those from maybe a kingly bloodline, or of some royalty, or of some importance in some way. Okay, so he had a dream, and this was his dream. Behold, voices and a noise, thunders and earthquakes, tumult among the earth, and behold, two great serpents came forth, both ready for conflict, and there came from them a great voice, and by their voice every nation. He ruled over 127 provinces, which was like really literally like 127, I guess maybe some countries that were smaller than the one he was in. But anyway, it would be like ruling over 127 countries, literally. They were big, full of thousands and thousands of people. Anyway, and by their voice every nation was prepared for battle, even to fight against the nation of the just. Now we know who the nation of the just is. That's the nation of the Jewish or Hebrew people, the Hebrew nation, the one that God had chosen, the nation that was brought out of Israel by Moses. And behold, a day of darkness and blackness, tribulation and anguish, affliction and tumult upon the earth, and all the righteous nation was troubled. So the Jews were going to be troubled, fearing their own affliction, and they prepared to die. They knew they were going to die, or they thought they were. And they cried to God. See, God's name is mentioned. Remember the 3-day fast? If you've read the story before, Esther called for a 3-day fast of all the people, all the Jews. They cried to God. And from their cry, there came, as it were, a great river from a little fountain, Esther, even much water. The light and the sun arose, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the honorable. The king saw the Haman as honorable, but he wasn't. The lowly that were exalted were Mordecai and Esther, who were exalted after the light or the truth was shown. And Mordecai, who had seen this vision and what God had desired to do. This vision that he received was something he knew was from God, and it was something that God desired to do. He was drawing his people back to him, back to fasting and prayer is what he was doing. Back to obedience to him is what he was doing. If you can't see that we need that in today's world, I think you're blind. You need the light to shine upon you. Having awoke, he kept it in his heart and desired by all means to interpret it, even till night. And Mordecai rested quiet in the palace with Gabbatha and Thahara, two of the king's chamberlains. They were eunuchs who guarded the palace. And he heard their reasoning, and he searched out their plans, and he learned that they were preparing to lay hands upon King Artaxerxes. And he informed the king concerning them. And the king examined the two chamberlains, and they confessed, and they were executed. And the king wrote these things for a memorial to Mordecai. And Mordecai wrote concerning these matters. And the king commanded Mordecai to attend in the palace, and he gave gifts for this service. And Haman, he's named, we call him Haman in our Bibles because that's the way it's written, but it's Ammon in this Bible, and it's probably actually pronounced more correctly as Ammon, Haman instead of Haman, but here it's Ammon. So this is Haman, the son of Amadathis, the Burgian. Actually, he's an Agagite, which you can see he's from the tribe of Agag if you read it in the English Bible that we are more accustomed to. And that is these people. It's just, like I said, it's in the Old English, things are very different. The way they're pronounced and said. Haman, the son of Amadathis the Burgian, was honorable in the sight of the king. See, he was the one who the king saw as being honorable, even though Mordecai had come to it's like, why can't the king see this? Mordecai came to you. He knew there was a plan to kill you. He came to you and told you, and you don't see him as honorable? Well, I don't understand how, I mean, we don't understand how people can be so blind sometimes, do we? We understand what that's like today, don't we? But anyway, Haman was the one who was seen honorable in the sight of the king. And he endeavored to hurt, Haman endeavored to hurt Mordecai and his people. He wasn't satisfied with just Mordecai being punished. He wanted all the Jews punished. Because of the 2 chamberlains of the king. So evidently, Haman was part of that plan. Evidently, Haman, because he was next in line after the king, he was the next highest person put in charge of things. He actually had the king's signet ring. That's high up there. I mean, he held a very, very high place with the king, the highest. And he knew that if something happened to the king, he would probably get he would get thrown. So I think he was in with it because he was really upset and wanted to kill Mordecai, because Mordecai told on the 2 chamberlains, and they were not able to carry out their plot to kill the king. So Mordecai is a very underhanded, very sneaky, very devious man. Haman is. And Mordecai and Haman just seem to be seen in just 2 very separate and different lots. Now, that's what we read until we get to verse 1. So all that I just read, his dream, behold, there came noises and a voice, voices and a noise. So there were voices. Haman, his friends, Haman's wife, they were plotting. They were making this noise together. So that could have been that. Thunders and earthquakes. I mean, they were going to hang. They built gallows 75 feet tall. Thunders and earthquakes. Imagine building gallows like that. Would that seem like thunderous things? They were going to hang Mordecai on these gallows, on this gallows. And earthquakes, they were going to kill not only one person. You hear the thunder in the distance, but when the earthquake comes and it actually shakes the earth, it's a whole different thing. So Mordecai being hung and killed would have been one thing, but the entire Jewish nation under the rule of King Artaxerxes in all 127 provinces, that's an earthquake. A tumult upon the earth. People were troubled, they were frightened, they were fighting, they were scared, everything was in an uproar. So this dream that he had, God was telling him that this stuff was going to happen. He was trying to tell Mordecai and warn him. 2 great serpents came forth. Well, that might be Haman and the king. For sure, one of them is definitely Haman, I would say, because they're called great serpents, and Haman and the king were the ones who agreed to put forth that proclamation to have all the Jews in all the provinces of the king and all the land that he ruled under killed. So I think that's who the 2 serpents were. They were both ready for conflict. They were going to fight against the Jews and kill them. There came from them a great voice. That was the message to kill. That was the great voice, because it went through all 127 provinces. That message, that proclamation that on this one certain day you're going to kill every Jew you find. Okay, and by their voice, every nation, 127 provinces, was prepared for battle. So they had, from the first month when the proclamation was written till the 12th month when it was supposed to be carried out, they had 11 months, at least 10 months, to prepare for battle. Even to fight against the nation of the just. We already said the nation of the just would be what we call today the Jews, or Israel possibly, although the Jews still are dispersed everywhere. Behold, a day, so there was a specific day when they were supposed to carry this out, a day of darkness and blackness, tribulation and anguish, affliction and tumult upon the earth. So they saw that as, that was their whole world. Those 127 countries or provinces, that was their world. And it seemed like it was upon the whole earth, but it just says upon the earth, which was a large portion of the earth actually. When you're talking about 127 countries, that's a lot of people that are partaking in this day of affliction. So it was blackness, darkness. It was just a dark time. Some of us believe we are living in some dark times today. And all the righteous nation, who are the righteous? Those who truly serve God. Some today would call them Christians. In our time, we would say that there's a Christian. We were in the United States at one time considered to be a Christian nation, although I believe that we are not anymore, and I believe it's the fault of the church because we have lost our sense of living righteously. We are no longer a righteous nation, and that's why we have lost being called a Christian nation and being truly Christian in our ways. That's my own personal opinion there, but I'm just trying to relate it to today's world a little bit. Yeah, but all the righteous nation was troubled. Many Christians are troubled today because of the shutdown taking us away from our churches, and because of churches being persecuted and fined and not allowed to open. So I do see some parallels to today's world. They were fearing their own affliction. Do we see persecution maybe on the rise? Do we see the possibility of that happening? Some do, many do. Is it going to happen? I think it's up to whether or not we're willing to take a minimum of 3 days and fast for it, like Esther and her nation did back then. We need to take a lesson from this. Fearing their own afflictions, and they prepared to die. They knew they were going to be killed, and they knew that persecution was coming. And what did they do? They cried to God. Esther called a 3-day fast. All the Jews in all 127 provinces stopped everything and fasted and prayed for 3 days. And from their cry, there came, as it were, a great river from a little fountain. I believe that great river. Have you ever mourned over something? When you think you're about to die, when you are troubled on every hand, when you think your family members are about to be killed for their faith, you know what it's like to heavily grieve over something. You know that feels like a great river of grief inside you, just bubbling out in sometimes groanings because you can't even put words to it. But Esther was a young woman, so it came from a little fountain, even much water, which may even refer to the tears that she probably shed while she was fasting those 3 days for her entire nation, because she felt the weight on her shoulders to go to the king for her entire nation. All those people, millions probably, were going to be killed, and she would be killed too once they found out the truth that she was also a Jew. And then it would, she was feeling all that on her shoulders. And light and the sun arose. The light was the truth that was revealed. Truth is always seen as having the light shined upon a situation. And I think when Esther revealed to the king that Haman was trying to kill her and all her people, that was the light being shed on the king's eyes, who thought Haman was an honorable man, but really wasn't. So I think that's what the light is. And the sun that arose, I think that part is when they made a new proclamation. He couldn't take away the old one because it was sealed with the king's signet ring by Haman, Haman wrote the proclamation and sealed it with the signet ring, with the okay of the king, because the king trusted him, which he was deceived. He shouldn't have. But haven't we all been deceived in some ways by some people somewhere? We see that a lot today. Anyway, it says that the sun arose. So I think the sun that arose was when a new proclamation that was made, saying that, look, you're going to come against the Jews on this day, but we are going to support the Jews and give them everything they need, support them in every way we can to fight against you killing them on this day and any other day, because we don't want that to happen, and we don't want this violence in our kingdom, and we want people to actually live peacefully together. So I think the sun that arose was the new proclamation that, aha, here's a way that they are going to be given to protect themselves. Yes, this day is going to come. Yes, it's going to happen. We're going to tell the people, look, you really shouldn't do this. But if you do, we're going to fight against you. Be prepared for a fight. Whereas before, the Jews had no defense. These are my own personal takings from this dream that Mordecai had. And the lowly were exalted at the end of it all, when all was said and done. Esther and Mordecai were exalted high in the kingdom. They were exalted into very high places. They were highly honored in many ways for what they had done, and how they had done it with integrity and with the right means, not underhanded, not sneaky, not coming behind people's backs. They were out in the open, speaking the truth and standing up for what they believed. And devoured the honorable, who was Haman, who wasn't really honorable, but he was seen as honorable and highly honored in the kingdom. So I just think that dream that God gave him, God kind of showed him ahead of time what was happening, what was going to happen, how it was coming about. And I think that's really cool. But like this is written before we get to verse 1, there are many other chapters that are the same way. For example, chapter 3, we get to verse 7, verse 8, and then verse 8 just kind of keeps verse 9 to 11. Okay, we get to verse 13. And we get to verse 13, and then verse 13 goes this whole rest of the page, and there's not another verse number. And on to the next page, then we have verse 14. Well, if you look at chapter 3 in your Bible, you will see that it only has 14 verses, and chapter 13 is not this long. So you'll see that in several places here, and I gotta tell you, there are so many really cool things written in here that are left out, and I mean, it would take me hours probably to go through all of them with you, but wow, it is just so cool. Chapter 5 just blew me away, and I can almost between verse 1 of chapter 5, I have to do this. I know I've been on here too long, but let's take a moment. Verse 5, And if you're familiar with this, you will love this. And it came to pass on the third day, when she, Esther, had ceased praying, she had put off her mean dress, her mean dress. In other words, she was in sackcloth and ashes. She took off her royal robes and was in sackcloth and ashes, groaning for 3 days, praying and fasting for the kingdom. This is directly after that. So she put off her mean dress, and she put on her glorious apparel, and being splendidly arrayed, and having called upon God, the overseer and preserver of all things, she took her 2 maids, and she leaned upon one of them as a delicate female. Well, she had fasted for 3 days. She probably felt weak, maybe less energy, at least. And she was also a nervous wreck because she was about to go before the king, unannounced, uninvited. And the other maiden followed, bearing her train. So she's wearing this royal robe where she's got a train that has to be carried by someone. These clothes might likely be heavy. And she was blooming in the perfection of her beauty, and her face was cheerful, and it were benevolent. But her heart was strained for fear. She's shaking inside, although on the outside she looks cheerful and you can't tell it. We've all been there. And having passed through all the doors, she stood before the king. And he was sitting upon his royal throne, and he had put on all his glorious apparel, covered all over with gold and precious stones, and was very terrible, which doesn't mean terrible. It means like it's so glorious you can't hardly, it's just almost impossible to look at. It's just so glorious. It's so beautiful. It just takes your breath away. You've all seen probably some landscapes that you just look out among a landscape and you're just like, oh, it's so beautiful. Just you almost can't catch your breath. It's so pretty. And that's what it means. And the King, and I know in the King James and in some of the Old English type Bibles, it's done the same way, but it just really means something. It doesn't mean that it was horrible. It just means it was just so glorious that it was just almost impossible to look at. It was so beautiful. And having raised his face, resplendent with glory, he looked with intense anger, and the queen fell and changed her color as she fainted. In other words, she saw the anger on his face, and she turned pale white and fainted. We all know what that looks like. And she bowed herself upon the head of the maid that went before her. So she kind of like fainted onto the maid that was supporting her, helping her stay steady. But God, see, God is in here many times. In some chapters, many times over. You've got to read it in this version to really see. It's just amazing. But God changed the spirit of the king. See, God's hand was in it. That angry, mean old king who could have said, I did not call you, off with your head, you are banished from this kingdom. God changed him. God can change anyone. Hear me, people. Anyone. Remember Saul who became Paul? God changed the spirit of the king. The prayer and fasting does amazing things, people, in our world, in our real world, everyday life today. It made a difference. She turned to God. Her nation turned to God. 3 days of prayer and fasting, and God changed the spirit of the king. Gentleness and intense feeling sprang from his throne, took her into his arms until she recovered. Oh, picture that. He went from angry to overflowing love for her. He sprang from his throne in all of his royal garments and scooped her up into his arms, full of love. That's beautiful. And he held her in his arms until she recovered. And he comforted her with peaceable words and said to her, "What is the matter, Esther? I am thy brother. Be of good cheer. Thou shalt not die, for our command is openly declared to thee. Draw nigh." And then he raised the golden scepter, which you have all seen in verse 2, which is verse 2 in our Bibles as well. But all that other part of verse 1, for whatever reason, was taken out and has been, I feel robbed. I really do. It's such a beautiful, beautiful section of scripture. I just love it. And folks, I gotta tell you, there are so many other places in here that are just amazing and glorious. But I am just here to say, if you don't have a Septuagint, get one. Oh my goodness, get one. You'll love it. You'll adore it. It's amazing. There's extra stuff, not only extra books, but extra parts to the verses. I mean, verse 1 goes all the way from here to here. It's like, isn't that beautiful? It's beautiful. Come on. It is. It's gorgeous. I love it. And I think that, I don't know. I feel robbed. And I love reading the Septuagint. And if you've enjoyed this, let me know if you've enjoyed this. Let me know if you liked it. I know it was long. I'm sorry, but I just couldn't help it. I'm loving it so much. If you love Bible study like I love Bible study, oh my goodness. I'm sure that you enjoyed this beautiful part of the story that you've probably never heard before because you've probably never read the Septuagint before. The Septuagint, get one. Seriously, get one. It's just beautiful. And this is not the only book that you don't know stuff about. Wait till you read some other books, some other stories. If you've been in church your whole life, you've heard these stories a million times, you're going to see them so different because there's little bits and pieces left out. Oh my goodness, I can't even describe it all. Have a great day. Enjoy Purim if you are celebrating it. What do they call it? Hamantashes? Eat them up. Enjoy. Seeing how I live in my camper, I don't have the stuff to make it. I was totally unprepared. But I am making muffins today. So muffins and dinner rolls are going to have to do for me this year. But I think maybe next year I'm going to read some of this and maybe I'll post some other things next year and be a little more prepared. This year I've had just so much going on. I've had many huge changes in my life, suddenly, unexpectedly, so many changes. And although I am loving living in my camper, it has been hard. I'm so glad that I'm able to enjoy this because I really needed it. And I just wanted to share this with you. So happy Purim, even though this is the last day of it. And take these lessons to heart. Learn from them. Take some of these lessons from Esther and compare them. There are a lot of parallels when you read throughout this story to what we are seeing in our modern day today now. Let me tell you something. Everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. God is in control. Do not fear. Just like Esther, it'll all work out in the end. The righteous people, if they turn to God, fast people, fast and pray. Fast and pray. Please do it. It's so important. Love you all. I'll be back with another one the next time. Oh, I see something amazing somewhere. Not at all. I just have to share it with you. And I'm going to visit the park today, so I'll probably post some stuff there too. Love you all. See you soon. Have a great day. Happy Purim.